this actually highlights an interesting question I've been meaning to ask you. When we're defining fascism, do you think the risk is greater in the definition being over-inclusive or being under-inclusive?
Depends on the context.
In terms of saying that this movement, this politician is fascist, should we be under-inclusive if we have to pick one of those? Because I think defining these things very, very neatly and precisely, as academics have been saying, even academics that agree with you, is very difficult. So I'm asking, if we have to pick between a definition that is over-inclusive and under-inclusive, I would say the over-inclusive definition is better because these things happening in our society represent a threat to like basic pillars of democracy and freedom. And I'd rather nip them in the bud than wait for them to get to their apex.
Well, but that's a double-edged sword. So, and Paxton brings this up all the time too, right? That's why I think it's more accurate. And you probably even agree with me. It's got to be context specific because you also run the risk of unfortunately you're going to call guys like me a Nazi and a fascist.
I don't know what you believe. I don't think you're a Nazi.
Now, hang on, maybe not you. Okay. Right? But your side, when Charlie Kirk died, was calling him a Nazi. Okay? All over the place. And a fascist. They call him that too. I see him call ICE fascist. I see
Trump
him call this person.
Trump called Biden a fascist. Yeah, people
I see him
around loosely.
Yeah. So the thing is like, if you make it, and this was Paxton's whole argument, right? The reason he didn't want to label people as a fascist, it's so over-inclusive that then it becomes the standard fare that everything is fascist, even things which clearly aren't. And in this case, I'm saying, I think we can meet in the middle. I think that it doesn't have to be so over-inclusive as to be absurd, which I think your definition is, or so under-inclusive that we can't point out what the systems are, which is what my definition does. So I think we can have a happy medium here.
The thing is, like you're saying, it's over-inclusive, but like authoritarianism isn't like something that we can just shrug off as like, yeah,
authoritarianism isn't fascism. Then bitch about authoritarianism and stop bitching about fascism.
It's a pillar of the three pillars I gave you. I don't know.
But it's also a pillar of monarchy. It's a pillar of autocracy.
And as I said in my opening statement, there's a lot of overlap between fascism and other flavors of authoritarianism.
Authoritarianism is a flavor of basically every ideology I can think of, actually. Now that I'm thinking about it, I can't even think of one. So it's like, then it's talk about... It
would be like liberal democracy or authoritarianism.
Oh,
like a system that is built off of negative rights.
Comparative to the Articles of Confederation, right? Yeah. Wouldn't you consider the Constitution to be highly oppressive?
It centralizes more power in the federal government.
Yeah, it's highly oppressive in comparison to...
Oppressive, I don't know. I mean, depends what you mean by oppressive
it's highly authoritarian in comparison to the Articles of Confederation.
I guess relative to it, sure.
Relative to it, right? Well, that's what we're talking about. Everything we're talking about here, within the confines of your ideology.
Wait, and what you're bringing up has been at like the centerpiece of debate in American politics, which is how much power should the federal government have. So that is actually something very relevant to call out and talk about.
And that's fine.
Right. I brought it up in my opening statement.
Talking about authoritarianism
when the feds are blocking off local police for investigating a crime scene, then I actually agree that that's pretty authoritarian.
You can talk about authoritarianism. Nobody's saying you couldn't, can't, or shouldn't, right? I talked about it all the time. Hang on, stop, bro. I talked about it all the time during COVID-19. The authoritarians who wanted us to wear our state masks.
Yes, you will own nothing and be free
and get our nice little vaccine passports, right? Okay, so
you still have your vaccine passport?
Authoritarian. Right? You bitch about it, have fun with it. But the problem is that that's not what you're doing. You're using loaded moral language to call people the most horrible things in history so that they can then adopt all of that fucking moral baggage. And that's what you're fucking doing.
Do you think that when I call someone a fascist, I'm calling for violence against them?
Why? I don't understand. You wouldn't stop Hitler?
Of course I would. But I'm saying, let me clarify.
Hang on, that's really silly.
That me calling someone fascist necessitates violence against them?
No, but I think it creates... Hang on. By itself, no. Okay. However, let me ask you this. Do you believe that if I got up every single day and demonized LGBTQ communities, that I would be creating stigma which would lead to violence against LGBTQ communities?
It depends on what you were saying, but it's very possible, yeah.
Is it likely?
I guess, yeah.
Okay, so would it not then entail that it's equally likely that if you get up every single day and stigmatize your opposition as being fascist, that would more likely lead to violence against those people?
Yeah, but you're talking about what did you?
Hang
what
on,
was the
hang on.
word
I
you
just want a
used?
yes or no there.
They're not analogous though.
Yeah, can you answer my question?
Why would I answer a question I don't agree with the premise of?
My premise is if you create stigmatization towards an out group, does
Yes.
does that usually increase violence towards that out group?
It really depends on what the stigma is.
Usually.
I don't know that I can say one where it definitely increases the likelihood of violence, but if it's from 5% to 15% or from 5% to 90%,
Then it's just
that's a different
acceptable.
question.
So it's just acceptable to like increase it by 5%? That's just acceptable.
Do you want us to sacrifice language to like compensate for the actions of other people I have no
Hey.
control over?
I'm just pointing out to you that if it's the case that you don't want there to be a
Wait, by this-
stigmatization
yeah.
towards an out group, right? Because you think it's going to necessitate violence. I'm making the
Yeah.
same argument backwards to you. I think the reason you should be more precise with what a fascist is, if you want to call them authoritarians and stuff like that, fine, have that argument. But that doesn't have the same loaded language, which
Okay,
then
I
adopts the Holocaust, right? It doesn't adopt the Holocaust. That's what
I-
calling people fascist does.
I just want to test your consistency here. So, do you think that Trump is like significantly increasing the threat of violence against people like Mark Kelly and Alyssa Slotkin when he calls for their hanging, or when he calls Jack Smith a deranged animal, or when he says that Rob Reiner was killed because he had TDS?
Do you realize? Okay, here, I'll just answer this. Let's say
Yeah.
yes.
Okay, cool.
So then in turn, that would mean that your rhetoric is increasing the likelihood of violence back the other way, right?
My rhetoric is way less inflammatory than anything I just gave.
But it would be increasing the threat of violence the other way, right?
From 1 to 2%. Sure.
Okay, so it's just a threshold. It's not okay to increase by
question is the
15%,
degree.
but it's 3%.
The question
Well,
is the degree.
what's the threshold that's okay?
threshold that's okay for what? To call someone a fascist?
No, to increase this through stigmatization, violence against an outgroup.
I'm not going to necessarily be choosing my language in accordance with like what other people are going to do because
And
they
neither
use that
is
word.
Trump. You're saying that there's a
No, but
threshold.
you're saying that
which is
increases the threat of
acceptable.
violence.
You're
That's your
saying there's
argument.
no. You're saying there's a threshold which is acceptable and a threshold that isn't. Okay,
It's not
what
But
is it?
acceptable or unacceptable?
Okay, well then
It's a
if
question
that's-
of do we have to refrain from using certain language that we think is accurate just to abstain? Because for example, when Trump
then
says those
stop
things,
bitching about what
hold
Trump
on.
says.
when Trump
Then
says
stop.
those things, he knows he's
Stupid.
lying. That's the difference.
Oh, now you're a soothsayer and you can tell when people are lying or not.
When
huh?
Trump calls Jack Smith a deranged animal, he knows
Uh-huh.
he's lying. I can prove it to you.
Okay, prove it.
Okay, so when we look at the classified documents case, which Jack Smith prosecuted him on, we have a recording of Trump saying, and I'm going to quote here, "See, as president, I could have declassified it. Now I can't, but this is still a secret." And then publicly he said, after he was indicted for the same thing, and by the way, they become automatically declassified when I took them. Same
So?
thing with the election indictment from
Yeah,
Jack
so what?
Smith, where
What does that
Trump
have to do with
knows-
him thinking he's a deranged animal?
Trump knows he broke the law,
I'm not a
and he's
hero.
being indicted for
I'm
breaking the
not
law.
That
And you think
doesn't
that
mean
Jack Smith is
he
a deranged
doesn't-
animal for indicting him.
That doesn't mean he doesn't think he's a deranged animal.
For
Do you
indicting
understand?
him? Hold on. I just want to be
Yes.
clear. Your argument here is that Trump knows he committed a crime, and he knows Smith's prosecution of him is legitimate, but then he just still thinks that Smith is a deranged
No, I'm
animal.
granting
and
that
it's not a rhetorical device.
I'm granting
used to-
that even if
raise
it's the
the tension.
case, I'm granting that even if it's the case that Trump knew this, I'm not even saying
He
that this, I'm not even saying it's true, I'm just granting it.
He did.
Okay? But Trump knows this. He allows
30
it.
seconds
All
before you
things
attack.
equal, right?
Get ready.
That still doesn't mean he doesn't think the guy's a deranged animal. Lies require intent.
Lucky always
Let me ask
feels
you-
good
let me give you another
going into a
example.
No,
fight.
let's stop.
Okay?
Do you agree lies require intent?
No, I think you're like really
Do
splitting hairs
you
here in a
agree
way
that
makes no
lies
sense.
require intent?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so then it is possible then that Trump does think the guy's a deranged animal, right?
He says that in the
battle
context of
starts in
saying his
5,
prosecutions were
4,
illegitimate, though.
But that doesn't
3,
mean he doesn't
2,
think that his prosecutions are illegitimate.
No, he knows that he committed a crime.
Even if he did, it doesn't mean he doesn't think the prosecution's illegitimate. This is the problem with you guys' philosophy. It's terrible.
You think that what I'm saying is terrible, and you're not twisting yourself into a pretzel to make
Not at all.
excuses for Trump right
I'm
now?
not making an excuse. I'm looking at your logic chain. The logic
Yeah.
chain is it requires your
You're
you
making
say,
very reasonable assumptions that are
well,
demonstrated.
okay, but hang on. There you go. Assumption.
Inferences, I'd say, actually.
Inference, okay, even better, inferences. But
Based on a lot of evidence.
but you can't demonstrate a lie, demonstrate consent, you can't make an inference. And I'm just following the logical chain, not making a claim to the true or false nature of whether or not it is the case that Trump did A, B, or C. It's irrelevant to the philosophy.
Sure, so I suppose it's hypothetically possible that Trump knows he committed a crime, and it's in his political like against his political interest for that crime to be prosecuted and publicized, but he still thinks that the prosecution is illegitimate, that Jack Smith is a deranged animal.
Exactly.
I guess that is possible, for sure.
Yeah.
The reason I would dispute that, though, is because this is not
I don't care why you would dispute it. I'm just explaining.
Do you think it makes sense to make inferences based on...
Well, you can say, I have reasonable doubt that Trump is lying.
I just want to clarify.
You use a declarative statement.
I just want to clarify. Do you think when you have repeated instances of a pattern, you can start making assumptions about the underlying thought process versus if there was just one instance of it?
I think we can own them.
So, like, for example, when Trump admitted privately after losing the election, it doesn't matter if he won or lost the election, you still have to fight like hell. When he told Mike Pence, you're too honest. When he called Sidney Powell's election
Bro, this
fraud
has
claims,
nothing. Hang on.
Let me just, no. Let me just finish. I let you finish.
Okay, I don't care about your Trump TDS.
You don't have to care about it. You don't have to care about it. When Trump privately called Sidney Powell's election fraud claims, nope.
Yeah.
Trump privately called Sidney Powell's election fraud
What does it have to do with
crazy
fascism?
and linked them to Star Trek.
What does it have to do with fascism?
It has to do with the point we were just on. After making clear multiple times that he knew he lost the election, Donald Trump posted.
What does that have to do with fascism?
Pro tip, if you want to know what I'm saying, maybe let me finish saying. When Trump acknowledges in private that he lost the election and then says publicly a massive fraud of this type and magnitude allows for the termination of all rules, regulations, and articles, even those found in the Constitution, that is him using something to justify the termination of the Constitution, which he has admitted multiple times he knows is not true. Does that make sense? It's an example of authoritarianism.
That's not fascism. Different words. Authoritarianism doesn't mean fascism.
It's a pillar of fascism. Brick doesn't mean house, but houses are made of bricks.
Okay, gotcha. Hang on. So when we're talking about authoritarianism, I can see, like I did, I'm doing authoritarian stuff that you don't like. What does that have to do with anything?
I'm just, why are you hiding your position on it?
Okay, because it's irrelevant to the debate.
Doesn't mean you have to hide your position on it.
Bro, is it relevant to the debate?
I think it's very relevant to the debate, yeah.
Explain how.
Because it would be an example of Trump engaging in authoritarianism, which is going to satisfy
Why would it matter if it's the case that I believe that?
I'm not saying it matters, I'm just genuinely
Great.
asking.
So it has nothing to do with the debate. Stay on topic.
It does have to do with the debate in regards to satisfying the
nothing
pillars of
to do with
definition of
my
fascism.
position on if Trump is X or Y or Z.
Yeah, because your position can be whatever you want it to be. Bananas and humans are the same. That's all fine. I'm talking about something which satisfies one of my three pillars of fascism, right?
Well, I concede that. I can
For the sake of argument?
yeah, I don't need to see it actually. What does that part have to do with the debate? What?
You actually saying things with your chest and not hiding from what you believe?
Nothing? So nothing has nothing to do with it, right?
Okay, if you want to be cowardly about it, you
Does it have, so it has
fine.
nothing,
That's
it has
fine.
nothing, has nothing to do with it?
That's
It's
fine.
just red herring?
You have nothing to do with
Red
anything.
herrings?
It's the same as...
It's just red herrings.
It has as much to do with this as your banana did, Andrew, sure.
Yeah, it's just red herrings, right?
Of course, yeah.
What does it have to do with the debate, whether I believe it?
It has to do with satisfying my three pillars of fascism.
And I concede that we could even grant authoritarianism, right? And it still doesn't satisfy even your own definition of fascism.
No, it doesn't satisfy you inserting your definition into my definition.
Oh, well, we're still on ultranationalism, and I give you tons of examples of what it is, and you just say, well, it's ambiguous.
It's just a category error. You're saying ultranationalism is like an ideology instead of behaviors. I'm saying it's a marketing technique on this politics.
No, it's your act.
And by the way, it can be both. But in the context of what I'm saying here, I'm not using it as an ideology or a behavior. I'm using it as a rhetorical technique used to justify power.
Can you name an ultranationalist nation that's ultranationalist on rhetoric alone?
On rhetoric alone? China is probably an example. They do a lot of trade with other countries as well.
They're not. How would they? They're not. They
well, I'd say they're
zero
nationalists.
sum.
They're
don't do zero
nationalists.
sum.
They're
They go by-
nationalists, not ultra-nationalists. Yeah.
Yeah, they're nationalists, not ultranationalists. So again, Can
So
you
wait,
name
to
an? Hang on,
clarify-
stop. Can
I'm
you
just clarifying
name,
your question.
Stop. Can you name an ultra-nationalist nation which is ultra-nationalist on rhetoric alone?
An ultranational, the United States currently.
The United States is ultra-nationalist on rhetoric alone,
The head of state, yeah.
but not actually.
He's nationalist, actually, not ultranationalist.
Yeah. So he's a nationalist, not an ultra-nationalist.
His governing
I
style is
tend to lost
nationalist, and his
souls,
propaganda
like a
and
shepherd
rhetoric is
tends to his
ultranationalist.
flock.
I feel like you definitely understand what I'm saying.
So
like,
he's,
oh yeah, look,
so
I
he's,
caught you. But
yeah, so he's a nationalist, not an ultra-nationalist. Got it. And you're saying,
governs as a
what you're
nationalist,
saying-
and politics is
yeah,
an
what you're,
ultranationalist.
what you're saying is that,
that hard?
the United States is ultra-nationalist on rhetoric alone.
The United States government has ultranationalist rhetoric to justify its power grab, and their actual governance is more akin to nationalism. Does that make sense?
So then how it actually acts is not in an ultra-nationalist way.
The United States currently, no.
Yeah. But so you,
I think there are
you-
aspects of it, but I
so-
wouldn't say we fully.
So
crossed the
purely, the nation of the United States, in your view, is an ultra-nationalist nation because
In rhetoric.
politicians use rhetoric.
threshold. No, you asked if it was an ultranationalist nation in rhetoric alone. Yes, in rhetoric alone, it is ultranationalist.
Is Mexico ultra-nationalist?
I'm not familiar with Mexican politics. I don't.
Canada?
I doubt Canada is.
Yeah, maybe not Canada. But like, what about the UK? Are they ultra-nationalists on rhetoric alone?
Probably not. They're like big fans of like multilateralism and NATO and like, internationalism, which is.
I mean, so is the United
internationalism
States.
is probably mutually exclusive
I mean, the United States is pro all those things too.
under Donald Trump.
Yeah, even under Donald Trump.
How?
What do you mean?
He's been like threatening NATO and tariffing our allies since he came in. How is that multilateral?
Yeah, but he's not fucking. He's worked within the confines of NATO before. In fact, one of the things that Trump did that was pretty good is he
Got them
made.
their fair share. And
Yeah, he made them increase their contribution. The thing is like that was a good thing, yeah, right? And that was, by the way, that's unilateral. You might think that that's ultra-nationalist on rhetoric, but it's like, wasn't it that rhetoric that actually made them do that?
I just
But
don't
anyway.
honestly buy you think Trump is like an internationalist in his foreign policy.
I think he's barely nationalist. Barely.
But do you think he's an internationalist and he's a big fan of like the UN and all these treaties and all these deals, multilateralism, globally,
Like-
Paris Climate Accord?
Well, when you say internationalism or globalism, what's the distinction?
I'd have to think about that some more. I haven't used the word globalism here, so there might be a lot of overlap there, but it depends on the context.
Okay, what about internationalist? Meaning,
When I say internationalist, I'm talking about the orientation in foreign policy towards cooperation and creating collectives between different countries to find common agreement and set some kind of standards for trade and international law that are mutually beneficial to everyone.
yeah, then I would say he's an internationalist, sure.
Need some ranged firepower.
Because his administration does just that.
Like
They
if we
negotiate
have
trade deals.
allies and then we start antagonizing those allies, isn't that moving away from internationalism?
But wait a second, those are two different claims. Let's separate the claims. Is Trump an internationalist? What is internationalism mean? It means that you're negotiating with other countries for trade and things like this. Then yes, he's definitely doing that. Now, if the second claim is it the case that he may be restricting some of that internationalism, then I can agree to both of those things. Sure.
Are you talking about in rhetoric or in governance?
Governance.
Okay, well, just to clarify again, I said he was ultra-nationalist in rhetoric. In governance, he's nationalist, not ultra-nationalist.
Yeah.
And I think the extent to which he has shifted away from multilateralism doesn't land us all the way in ultra-nationalism, but it does land us in nationalism when he is tariffing things like Canadian
I
steel
agree.
and
I agree he's a
Mexican driving,
nationalist. Just barely a
who
nationalist.
justifies his power with ultra-nationalist rhetoric.
That not so sure about. Like for instance, again, the gold card, the Trump gold card.
Yeah.
How's that ultra nationalist?
It's not.
It's
And
not.
He doesn't run around campaigning on it because his supporters hate it. They also hate the H-1B visa.
Yeah,
stuff.
maybe, but the thing is like
That actually proves my point.
Hang
That his
on, there
rhetoric
was-
has created a movement that hates the actual policy.
There was rhetoric that Trump utilized saying that he was going to say, you know, if you want to come into the country, it's going to be $1.5 million. He did campaign with that. That is in fact
Hold on,
true. He
that's
did.
not. That
You
is
need
pretty
a
nationalist
top-notch
rhetoric.
team
That's
to
saying
win
I'm
this
putting up
one.
a very high barrier to let people in.
No, that's not nationalist rhetoric. Nationalist rhetoric would be the people who are here already. They get the priority over everybody else, right? That's our nation first. That's what we're talking about here. So in this case, this other foreign national being able to buy dual citizenry would be the opposite of
Wait,
nationalism.
what is the purpose, though, of him saying we're going to increase the fee to come to the United States? He's appealing to his ultra-nationalist base by saying we are not going to let people come in
He's
unless
appealing
they
to
pay
his
us.
nationalist base. Ultra-nationalists would hate that.
I don't, not necessarily, no.
Well, that's literally what you just got done saying. You
30
just got done
seconds
saying
before you attack.
his base
Get
hates
ready.
this policy. They're ultra-nationalists. So therefore, sir, ultra-nationalists would hate that policy. You just contradicted yourself again.
Say it again?
You just got done saying
Yes.
his base hated the policy because they're ultra-nationalists.
Mhm.
And then you just contradicted that very same fucking statement 5 seconds later. So one, which is true? It
Hold
can't
on,
be P and
because-
not
Battle
P.
starts in
Again, are you
5,
talking about rhetoric or
4,
governance here? You
3,
keep like conflating the two. to
No,
create
in
confusion.
this case, we already determined this is a governance policy.
And governance has nothing to do with any of my claims that I
Even on the rhetoric, it's contradictory. Because even on the rhetoric, if rhetorically his base is ultranational, but they hate the policy, he's promoting the policy, right? Which he did. Then
Which is
how
are you
does
talking about the
that
gold card?
rhetorically-
Wait, are you talking about the gold card or him charging like?
No, I'm talking about him saying that he was going to charge people millions of dollars to get citizenship. In his first election cycle, he talked about this multiple times.
The gold card? Is that what you're
Not the
talking
gold, not just the gold card, but not his first time running. He made mention multiple times about having foreign nationals pay millions of dollars to become an American citizen.
To clarify, the first time that Trump ran for president, I don't think that he was actually exhibiting anything above like stage 1 or 2 fascism. I think a better description would be probably like populist, a liberal populist. So I think the rhetoric is juxtaposed between the 2016 campaign of Trump and especially the 2024 campaign of Trump, where the whole theme is I am the recognition, we're going to bring back the golden age, we're going to lock all these criminals up. Those are very different allusions and very different pieces of imagery.
They're pure sophistry. So what in the second term? What in the second term is the only thing in the second term that gets into this is just J6? Is that it?
J6 was his first term.
No, but in his second term governing,
Yeah.
is it just J6 that now makes the delineation
Delineation of what?
of now he's like a stage 4 fascist?
Yeah, it has to do with how he's using power.
Okay, what is the delineation of how he's using power now versus his first term?
He's indicting political opponents. He's openly defying court orders and saying he wants to defy court orders. He is desecrating rule of law by not prosecuting federal crimes of people who are allies of his. He is consistently lying to Congress, violating Congress's laws.
Didn't he do all
misappropriating
of that in
congressional
his
funds.
first term?
No, nothing near what he's doing now.
Well, wait a second. We're back to scale here. There's no threshold delineation. You're not saying, all you're saying is that they could just gotta meet the requirements. Which of those requirements didn't meet in the first term? Well, in order to be a stage 4 fascist, what's the requirement?
He has to be governing in conjunction with elites in his party and trying to basically push the envelope as much as possible in terms of fascism without fully letting the mask slip. Because that's where Paxton says, stage 5, either the elites can end up winning and it becomes standard authoritarianism, or
Okay.
the fascist leader is going to win.
And is
fascism.
that what he's doing right now?
I think we're currently in stage 4.
Okay. What in the first term, right? How did he not do that? He was still, from your view, like, weren't you guys impeaching him and shit because you were accusing him of doing
For
exactly
the
things?
Ukraine phone call for the Biden thing?
Sure.
Yeah, again, I'm just giving you examples in a second term that are way more flagrant, a more consistent pattern over time. So you can isolate things and try to look at them in a vacuum, but if you look
But
at
it sounds like he's just doing the same shit that he was doing that you hated him for before.
he didn't do a lot of shit in his first term.
What things?
He didn't defy the Supreme Court.
In his first term?
Yeah,
Okay. Which defiance are we talking about?
the Kilmar Abrego Garcia return.
Oh, back to
I tried asking you about this earlier.
All right, gotcha. Okay, so let me ask you this: would he have? Do you think he would have in his first term?
I think probably, yeah, because his administration was filled a lot more with sort of establishment Republicans and traditional civil servants.
I see.
Now it's filled with crazy royalists.
So he was always a fascist.
I mean, stage 2 fascism would still be fascism, sure.
Yeah, so he was just always a fascist, and he was waiting to
Yeah,
get
his
his.
movement was always a fascism.
I see. I got it. All right. So backing up, let's just look at the totality here.
Yeah.
The totality is that Trump's a nationalist, not an ultranationalist.
Now you do the
Okay.
same
His
for me,
governance,
Queen.
not his rhetoric.
Yeah, and the United States is currently a rhetorically fascist nation. Is that right?
Yeah, you use fascist propaganda, fascist imagery to justify power. I mean, you can boil it down to just rhetoric, but rhetoric serves a very instrumental purpose in politics. I'm sure you agree.
And you think that that is a more powerful way to describe the historicity of the movement, which essentially led and contributed to the massive reconstruction of nations post World War II. that you're rhetorically a fascist. Let me ask, do you think that has no loaded moral baggage? There's like no
Fascist or ultranationalist?
well, actually
You
both.
thought you got rid of me?
Fascist probably has a lot more baggage than
more.
ultranationalist does, yeah, but
And
that
do you
baggage is also
think-
going to vary. I've debated people who say it's based that he's a fascist.
So let me ask you this: do you think that when a person is calling a person a fascist, they ever mean you're a rhetorical fascist? Ever?
Better stop that vehicle!
I'm not saying fascism overall is just rhetoric. I'm saying ultranationalism in my definition of fascism is rhetorical.
Yeah, but when you
Fascism also
call
has to do
Trump a
with behavior.
fascist, you mean that in the United States, if they say the United States is fascist, do you think that they ever mean the United States is rhetorically fascist? Ever?
They
Anybody who says it.
depends on who you're talking to. I think that probably people like Jason Stanley would agree with what I'm saying.
Yeah, but like
Things
the
an
common
appeal to
person,
authority or
the
something.
common person. If
I
you
know
walk
the
over the
common
common person and you're
Yeah.
like, is the United States a fascist nation? Do you think any of them are going to be like, it's
Just to be
it's
clear,
rhetorically
maybe we'll
fascist?
find a little piece of agreement here. I think the vast majority of people that use the word fascism is male. Like they don't even know what the
Oh,
difference is.
I definitely agree with this.
Because I'm at
when
least
talking to-
referencing a school of thought, and most people don't even know that there are schools of thought in this. They don't know what they are.
Yeah, but I do. And so the thing is like, what's confusing to me here is you keep on saying that your definition has more use than mine. And yet, and yet, if you were to ask a common person which view of fascism they're talking about when they're talking about fascism, they're definitely going to defer to mine. Nobody's going to be talking about rhetorical fascism, dude.
People on the right can defer to yours, but I think if we both
No,
laid out our
everybody's
definitions-
going to defer to mine, dude.
If
Come
we
on.
both laid out our definitions, I think you'd probably agree that less than people would agree with my definition.
No, I don't think so. I think if I were to go over to a random Democrat, just a random one, who says, yeah, I voted for Biden, and any random Republican who's like, yeah, I voted for Trump. And I was like, here's our different definitions. This guy thinks we're in a rhetorical fascist nation. And what I
You
believe,
have to straw man me.
you do believe we're in a rhetorically fascist nation.
Rhetorically ultranationalist and ultranationalist
No,
rhetoric.
you said
Killer
rhetorically
fascist.
fascist, too, right?
Only 60 seconds left.
Don't you?
That's not my overall
No?
argument. The
Okay,
United
sorry.
States government
Yeah, okay.
is fascistic. One of the pillars is
yeah.
rhetoric.
Gotcha, okay. He thinks we're in a rhetorically ultra-nationalist state, right? State or fascist, based on the fact that he thinks that there's too much authoritarianism, and he believes that we're ultra-nationalist rhetorically. That's what he believes. Rhetorically, we're ultra-nationalist, which I think is just pure
That'd be
equivocation.
a pretty uncharitable and weird way to frame
Well,
my
wait a
definition,
second,
but I
but
suppose
it,
you could say that.
but it is. You think that Trump's a nationalist. He just uses ultra-nationalist rhetoric.
To be clear, I break it up into three categories for a reason. One is the fuel and the pretext used for the power grab. Two is the actual power grab and the consolidation of power. And three is how that power is entrenched and used against enemies. Those are all very distinct categorically as well.
Yeah,
Some are
but
more
the problem
rhetorically
is
focused
like
and some
those-
are more government focused.
Yeah, but those pillars revolve around ultranationalism, and your belief is that
Not just ultranationalism, you zeroed in on that.
That's
It also
the
appeals to a
pillar.
mythic past.
but the pillar without ultranationalism doesn't work. All
Any
the other
of
things,
one things it is on.
yeah, but all those other things work in context with almost everything else, absent ultranationalism.
Ultranationalism is a big part of the context.
It's like 80%, doing 80% of 50%. It's doing a lot of the work.
Most people say it's doing 33.333% of the thing because this is talking about the justification fascists use to obtain and use power. It's not talking about their tactics in using power and how they actually obtain and consolidate power. Those
Yeah,
are
but
different
this,
questions.
wait a second. I would say, if I was talking to a person, fascism is a historic movement which utilizes these key categorizations in the fascist states I can point out. It was the policies, the philosophy, the government type, That's what you want to watch out for when it comes to fascism.
Mhm.
And then you give your definition and say the thing that qualifies mine is that right now he's using rhetoric, which is ultra-nationalist, but he's just a nationalist. You don't think that but that is what you're saying.
I would say he appeals to a mythical past and ultra-nationalism to manufacture consent for the consolidation of governmental power, which he then weaponizes against his enemies and uses it to entrench the power.
Yeah, but I would just counter with, so do all politicians. They're always talking about
Some politicians are authoritarian.
Kind of. A lot of them want to, well, every president has basically attempted to entrench the executive branch a little bit more, almost all of it.
Sure. Which other politician has defied a court on purpose?
Well, this would be going back to the...
Jackson, maybe?
this would be going back to, well, in that particular case, if I remember right, just off the top of my head, he was trying to do some kind of movement with Indians, and the court said no. He went ahead and executed it anyway. But all the way back to the very beginning, the founders were contrary to their own beliefs. I mean, starting with the Whiskey Rebellion. So, and by the way, we can look at other things too, like Kent State, for instance. What happened at Kent State, various things like this. And we can say, okay, that's authoritarian.
There have certainly been flashes of authoritarianism in American history.
Well, we can also say
the Japanese internment.
Yeah, but we can also say there's authoritarianism, which has been pretty good, that we appreciate. You know what I mean? Like sure. Like for instance, when we stopped segregation at schools and the National Guard was deployed, so that the schools that didn't want there to be desegregation had to desegregate. That's good authoritarianism, right?
I don't know that I call that authoritarianism.
They federalized the state National Guard.
But a big part of my authoritarian pillar includes the words bad.
They federalized the National Guard against the will of the
It was an
governor.
expansion of power. Authoritarianism, I'm including bad faith in that, right?
That doesn't fucking mean anything. What does that mean?
Bad faith?
Yeah, what does it mean?
Do you agree that someone can engage with...
Don't ask me a question, answer mine. What does that
Okay,
mean?
I'm asking the audience then. Does everyone agree that someone can
God, this
engage
guy.
with laws and institutions that they don't like in good faith to reform them for the better? And someone could also engage with those same laws and institutions in bad faith to delegitimize them and entrench their own personal power?
That doesn't tell us what bad faith means here.
Oh, intentionally lying.
That's all bad faith means?
In this context, sure. Do you want, like, the etymology of the word bad faith?
Kind of.
Okay, we have, like, what, 1 minute left for
But I
history
mean,
lesson, or-
the thing is here is like the whole idea is that you have to engage in the laws in good faith, but then we're just back to intention. If it's your intention,
And
then
we
you're
have
not lying.
demonstrated intent